Hi, welcome to the Shaking Off Stigma live stream for GER. My name's Eliot. I'm here with my grandmother. I'll let her introduce herself.
Okay, my name's Cindy.
If you want to introduce yourself, Grammy. Do you want to introduce yourself?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So I'm a high schooler in Belfast, and yeah. So do you want to get started?
Okay.
Get right into this?
And my name's Cindy, and I'm Eliot's grandma. And we've been chatting about these things, and we both have an interest in them. So, yep, we can certainly get started, Eliot.
Yeah. So I was wondering, I received generally positive messaging from my family and the school system when it came to women's health and reproductive rights and those kinds of things. But I'm sure it was like very different when you were in school and when you were younger. So what kinds of messages did you receive about things like that?
None. No, it is essentially, nobody talked about it. So like say prior to getting your period, I didn't know anything about it. And when it happened and I went to my mom and said, oh, I don't know what's the matter with me, she gave me a little booklet about somebody and somebody wondered and handed me the sanitary napkin and those, well, you wouldn't even know what they were, but they were like elastic things that you that you pin these things to. And it was terribly scary. Because I think I must have been 13, I must have been 12 or 13. And nobody talked about it. When I said to my mom, well, I tried to ask some questions and I had a brother who was a year younger. And I said, well, maybe we should tell Rich about this because, this is something. She said, no, the things are in the closet. That's where we keep them. If you have something you want to ask me, go ahead. But I was pretty sure she wasn't going to answer it. And I don't even remember like friends talking about it. It was just like this taboo thing that nobody talked about. If somebody had a problem in school like that, they were bleeding or something. I was thinking about this before we did it. What they did, I was in a Catholic school, what they did was put a sweater around, tied a sweater around whoever the poor girl was so that you couldn't see the blood. But, that stuff used to happen and you just didn't.
They didn't have like any. Did they have any like period products at school that you could get like from the nurse?
No, not that I ever knew of. I think somebody would probably take the girl out of the room. And I don't know what happened because thankfully that never happened to me. But they would just take you out of the room and then if your clothes, that wasn't unusual either, that your clothes got messed up, then you got the sweater technique or whatever else they had to kind of tie around you because you were still in school. So no, we didn't talk in the very beginning about anything. And it pretty much stayed that way. It just pretty much stayed that way. When I got to college, which seems pretty crazy because you had to go through high, then people started talking about it. And I was in a nursing program. So, we were all interested in biology and what was going on. And I can remember the person who showed me what a tampon was, and I had never seen that. And so we all had a little group of girls, and she poured water on it and showed us all what happened and, how to put it in. And I must have been a freshman in college. And when I went home and said to my mother, look what they have now. You don't have to use these rag things. And she said, you have to be married to use those. And I said, no, they sell them in the store. And she said, well, no, you have to be married. And I thought, and I kept saying, no, anybody can buy them. And I didn't realize till I got back to school and talked to my friends about it, that what she was trying to say was you have to be a virgin. You cannot be a virgin and use a tampon. Because I don't know whether she thought it broke your
Oh,
hymen. I don't know what she thought, whether she must have thought that it broke your hymen, because that's what she said. And in those days, Eliot, too, you couldn't you couldn't get birth control. You couldn't so there my mother never, she spelled sex, she said sex, even when I was an adult. I never actually heard her say the word. And I think it was pretty much
God.
like that I know you're shocked because your mom's great about talking about stuff, but no, we didn't. It happened, you just pretended it happened, and it was pretty
You
scary.
mentioned you mentioned that you went to a Catholic school. Did that have like any big impact on the messaging that you got? Or was it mainly like a general thing? Did all schools have the same like you don't talk about it kind of thing? Or was it like a lot more like impacted in religious schools? Because I know religion often has a lot to do with messages about like reproductive rights.
Mhm. Well, I didn't have much contact with people who weren't in Catholic schools, and I was in Catholic schools all the way through from um, grammar school to high school to college. So I was pretty brainwashed. And it had a big, yes, it did have a big impact, because when I was in college was right at that point, you could only get birth control if you were married. You had to have permission from your husband. You couldn't, abortions were illegal until 1970, and that's when I graduated. So from college. And so and they were very, very clear. Well, I can tell you a couple of little anecdotes about college. They, we were all nurses, but we were in a college that was liberal arts. So other people were teachers and other subjects. And when we were getting past into our junior and senior year, girls would come and ask us questions because they thought we knew all about stuff. And, by this time we're like 19, 18, 19, 20. And they would ask about it. And so I tended to be a bit of a, I don't think rabble rouser, but I did tend to confront some of this stuff. And I don't even know where that came from. It just didn't seem right. Well, anyhow, I went to the nun who was in charge and said, we need to know about birth control. And she said, no, you don't, because Catholics don't use it. And I said, well, we're going to be taking care of other people who are not Catholics, and even people in our classes that are asking. And so she kept saying no. So then I pulled out that was the first year they took federal money to support the college. And I said, you're getting federal money, and I'm sure you can't censor us like that. So she said, okay. So she got somebody from public health, and they locked us in a room in the basement with the public health nurse and her little kit of condoms and diaphragms and different kind of things. And she told us about it and what it was for. But the nun then comes in at the end and says, you can't tell anybody else about this. This is just for you. None of these things can leave the room. Yeah, that's just kind of how it was. Pretty startling.
It was weird because in elementary school, when we had like, so it started off as like puberty and then later in high school you have sex ed. And in puberty ed, as opposed to having all the girls and boys sit in a room and learn about like what's happening to our bodies or whatever, they took the boys out of the room to another room, had the girls in one room, boys in another, and the boys watched a movie and the girls got to learn about our bodies, and the boys were like not really supposed to know about any of this. And then they sent us home at the end of the day with like a little kit full of stuff, like deodorant and pamphlets about our periods, which is like great, you're educating us, but why are you educating them too? Because it's really important to not treat it like it's some like keep it under wraps thing, because it's really, it was very much this like illusion of like we're doing a good thing because now we're educating you, except not really, because you're teaching young girls to not talk about these things, and you're teaching them like the same things. It's the same message of we keep this in the closet, like you were saying. It's just now it's like a little bit less, but like it's always been like this sort of secret thing, like you hide the tampon in your sleeve when you're going to the bathroom, or you like, it's like the sort of this universally known thing that it's like this topic of shame, which is terrible because it shouldn't be. But like ever since we were little, that was the thing. And they would do like the puppet shows to like talk about puberty. And it just felt, it was just weird because it was this like diluted message of like positivity, but it didn't feel good at all. It felt like we were doing something wrong.
Yep.
Even though like it was like, what?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, could you
were
say
saying?
could you say a little bit about when you went around with some of your friends in the when you were in junior high and what you discovered in the bathrooms?
Yeah. So I was in student council in middle school, and in my 7th grade year, me and my friends got this idea, and we wanted to make period products like in the bathroom, there to be an area where girls could just like get a tampon if they needed one, or pad or panty liners or something like that, because I've been to schools that have those and I think it's really great, because you could go down to the nurse, but I think it would be better if they were just accessible there. And so we were thinking about that and talking about it in student council. And I remembered that around the school, there were these big, bulky metal boxes that were attached to the walls in the bathroom. And they have them in a bunch of schools. So it wasn't just like exclusive to our school. And they have engraved on them tampon, and I think napkin is what they call the pad
Napkin.
one. And it says 25 cents on each, and you were supposed to insert a quarter and then it would give you a pad or a tampon. And I was like, okay, this is absurd. Nobody uses these anymore. So we decided to go around and try and get one out of the things. So we scavenged around in our backpacks to try and find quarters, and we went around, and all of them were empty except for one. And in one of them, there was a pad that dated back to like the year 2000. And we took it out. It looked like a diaper. It was like this thick, and it was terrible because it's like, why do you even have those there? You could move them and have room for something else, or like if you're going to keep them there, refill them or something. Like, it's not great, but like at least it'd be something. And I was really excited and to like push for this thing, and I reached out to some programs to try and like get this happening, but then the year ended and COVID hit, and then it all sort of spiraled downhill. But it was like a big shock because it was always this thing that like I didn't really think about, the things in the bathroom because they sort of had just like become like almost decoration. But the fact that like people were using them at one point and had to deal with the fact that they were like this big, that's crazy. Why didn't they just take them out? It shows that they have such neglect for something that over half of the school's population has to deal with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just always ridiculous.
Yeah, those thick pads were that's what I
Gosh.
got when I first got my period. They were very thick pads. They were real uncomfortable, but I wasn't laughing because it was funny, but I was laughing when I thought back to it because those things that were in all the bathrooms, when you got in there, if you didn't have a quarter, you had to hope that somebody else came in who did have a quarter, because so that you could get whatever it was you needed out of that stupid machine. But now in the high schools, do they have?
And the thing was, they were broken.
Yeah. Do they?
Have the boxes.
Do
I'm
they
not
have?
sure. I should check next time I'm there.
Mhm.
But the machines didn't even work for money. We put a quarter in and the quarter just fell through.
Oh,
It didn't
gee.
even take the money, which is
Oh,
good in a sense because we would have wasted a lot of money. But it's just like some things haven't changed enough, and it bothers me a lot because you'd think we would have made more progress over time, but then we find 20-year-old pads in the girls' bathroom, and it shows that, like, do you even care?
yeah.
And it was
Things certainly have changed since I was younger, but there's still there's just so much further we need to go, because like when I was in college and one of my friends got pregnant, and she came to me and said, if I steal this particular drug from the hospital, which is one that would cause your uterus to contract, she thought that it would cause her abort. And I said, I have no idea how to I don't know if that would work. I don't know how I would give it to you. As far as I would think, just knowing some stuff about anatomy, I think you could have a hemorrhage. And she said, well, I don't know what else to do. And I said, well, I don't either, but I don't think doing what you're suggesting would help. And it wasn't a funny thing, but the thing was that her partner, who she dearly cared about, was a seminarian. That's somebody who's getting ready to be a priest. And he was at the boys' college. And I think they got married. She left school, and at that time, we also had, if you were a nursing student, if you signed up it was during the Vietnam War. So if you signed up to be if you signed up for the Army or the Navy, they paid for your schooling. And so people did that. And I had several friends who got married to somebody who was going over to Nam. And when they came, when the husband, the guy left, they wouldn't let the girls live in the dorm because they didn't want them to come back and tell us whatever married people did and what they were doing. And these poor girls were like, most of them didn't even come back to school. I don't even know if they got into another college or what they did, because now they're all alone and their husbands are off at war, and we're saying, no, you can't come back in here because you got married. Now they're doing the thing that they were supposed to, theoretically at least, supposed to do: no sex before marriage. And they got married thinking they were doing the right thing, and they were just as far as I was concerned, they were just abandoned. So I think one of the things when I got involved with GRER here in Belfast, which was, I think we had our first meeting in 2017, October of 17. It started to bring back all those things, because as we compared notes and experiences, it was hard. But you're right, there's a whole lot of things that haven't changed. And with this political arena the way it is, I think that's one of the things for me that kind of pushes me to do this kind of thing, because I'm scared that your generation and the generations that come after you are not going to have access to birth control, anything like that. So I think it's real important.
I haven't had as many experiences as you because I'm so young. And so my big influence on like where a lot of things I've learned besides like my parents and you has come from the media, which in some ways is good because I've learned a lot, but the media can be really toxic about this. But I'm also really scared because like I don't want to grow up and be going through something and not have what I need. Like there are basic needs for everyone. And just because I am a woman, I don't want to be like, I don't want those rights taken from me. And like basic things that I need, like period products, like those should be available to everyone, like in schools. That is something I've advocated for a lot in every school I've been in. And abortion rights, I don't think people who are against abortions realize that if you take away someone's right to have an abortion, it's not going to stop them from having an abortion. It's just going to put the baby and the mother's life in danger. That's because right. People will have a label or unsafe abortions. And birth control should just, I don't understand how people can be against abortion and against birth control. Because if you want someone to not get rid of their child, then give them the opportunity to not have children. Like it doesn't make any sense if you add all the pieces together. And that's why it makes me so frustrated, because it's completely irrational.
Yep.
And it's like, there's not one particular thing that I can pinpoint that I'm most passionate about when it comes to this subject, because if you look at it, everything intertwines with each other. Like all of the different components in like just women's rights and abortion and healthcare, and like everything weaves together into this big web that I think everyone should care about, because it is important to everyone, even people who like, even men, like they should know about it and they should care too, even though it doesn't directly affect them in all cases. Yeah, I kind of went on a rant there. Sorry.
No, I think you're absolutely right about that, Eliot. And I think it all does connect. And I think it has to do with, well, I'm being kind if I say it has to do with ignorance, because I don't think there's any excuse for men to be as ignorant about women's bodies and how they work and reproduction. And one of the things I'd like to see some of those people who are making decisions about, well, not me anymore, but about you and women everywhere, I'd like to see them have to have a test, true, false, or whatever. Name the body parts, explain to it, because they don't know anything about women. And I truly believe it's power and control, and it's nothing else but that, because they don't want women in the workplace. So what way to keep you out? Keep you, that used to, people used to joke about that, barefoot and pregnant. That's where women should be. And people, when you get people who think that way, and they have the power to legislate, or they have the power to hire and fire, yeah, it prevents women from being able to do what we all know we can do. I mean, you have goals in life, you're bright, you're intelligent, you're real good with people, and I don't know where you're going to end up eventually, but you're going to be great. But not with these kind of pressures pushing women down and making it like none of this matters. And I think contraception, I can remember thinking this back when I was probably when I first learned about it. And I don't know why, coming from where I came from, why my ideas weren't the same as the people around me. But I can remember thinking that contraception was the biggest boon for women ever, and that we would see that as time rolled on, because the ability to control whether you have children or not, or, some women want to have children, some women don't. Women should be able to do whatever they want to do, I think, with their bodies. And it's unbelievable. So I think one of the things, because I'll say I got kind of complacent about some of these issues. I did phone banking in the 80s, but things, I don't know that things were going along smoothly, but it certainly wasn't the political climate that it is now. And I think you're absolutely right. It's all intertwined and it all fits together. And I think the thing that's going to save women is people like you and people in your generation, because you stand up and say things where, my upbringing was, you don't challenge men. You can't act like you know more than they do, even though you could be in situations where you knew more than everybody, the men there. But you girls and women don't do that. And I think that's what's going to save us. But you got a battle on your hands. And I think you need
It's
to
hard
know that.
because I was just gonna say it's hard because, like, in my school, when this kind of topic comes up and me or people who share my beliefs about this speak up about it, there are always those really loud people in class who are like, they're a lot, and they talk over you, and
Mhm.
they make you out to be like really over dramatic or whatever. And it doesn't discourage me, but it makes me angry. And I have to try and control that anger because I know that's what they want from me. They just want a reaction, but it's very difficult sometimes
Yep.
because I don't like dealing with immaturity when it comes to something I'm passionate about.
One of the things I learned how to do when I was working, just for people's information, I'm a retired nurse practitioner. And so I dealt with men who were in charge and things all along. And I oftentimes were in meetings where we were making clinical decisions about different things. And one of the things I watched men do, and I practiced doing it, was how to interrupt. And I think as a woman, that sounds rude, because we tend to, we want to hear people's opinions. We want to do whatever. But when I watched the men in the room and what they did to each other, and what they did to me was talk louder, break in the conversation, change the subject. And I deliberately learned how to do that, because I thought otherwise I could sit there and nobody would listen to me. So I think, I think you're right. You can't just get angry, but I think you can learn verbal techniques and other kind of things. You got it. You're just going to develop how to use it as time goes by. And I think it's important for me, and I think for people from my generation, to be able to reach out to you, because we're kind of like the bookends. The generation that came after me could get birth control, could have abortions. And so I think it's important that you know kind of where we came from, so that you and your friends and the people who listen to you say what you think and get what you want. I know you've been to some demonstrations. You know how to do that.
Yeah.
And It looks like we're kind of winding down.
I'm always like,
Mhm.
yeah,
It looks like we're kind of,
I,
I mean, I
yeah,
think you and I
I've
could go
always
on for,
been,
we could do this for a long time, but
yeah,
I think we
I've
have.
always been like, I get real fired up when it comes to talking about stuff like this,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think it's a good time to finish.
Hmm.
Well, it was great talking to you.
Oh,
All
you
right,
too.
goodbye, everyone. I hope